This week's episode of Toilet Bound Hanako-kun was an experience. I mean, I think most of us anime originals were probably pretty excited to see Mitsuba and just what was going to happen with this ghost of the lockers and the very perverted, funny, and girly personality. What was going to happen with that? But I don't think any of us, unless you read the manga, was expecting him to be, well, so tragic. I mean, of course, if you're haunting the hallway or the backyard or any place of a schoolyard and you're that young, you're obviously going to have some form of tragic story. Hit by a car, murdered, something, right? But at the same time, I feel like the way this anime operates is it tries to make you feel comfortable and safe, and you always will have a good idea of what you're going to experience, but then they'll just hit you like a truck in an isekai, really give you that wake-up call to see, wow, Mitsuba and Ko and just that entire build-up of friendship to see such a seemingly tragic end. I mean, this is Hanako-kun. There's always potential for characters to still be around and we just don't know all the fundamentals, but if this has to be the conclusion for a character's story, I mean, it's kind of beautiful and tragic all wrapped up into one. I mean, the episode kicks off in a similar fashion to how last week ended, with such a perverted and just over-the-top reactions left and right, and you're thinking to yourself, that's going to be the episode, like that's going to be just a lot of fun shenanigans. This is going to be a ghost that doesn't want to play by the rules, who doesn't actually want to be saved, who isn't going to try to make you tear up or feel bad for him, but rather just be a troll, similar to how Hanako kind of hides his own faults and shortcomings and just really is that flirtatious, perverted, or trollish ghost. I thought that's what we were going to get, and then it just keeps piling and piling and piling to the point where you're just like, okay, let's tone it down a little bit, let's take it a bit slow, let's have a little friendship build here, and then you just see death and despair. I'm like, okay, Hanako knows how to play with our emotions, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Honestly, this show is fantastic. I mean, I thought the build-up to their friendship was handled quite well. I'm not sure some people will find that fast-paced or slow-paced or just the right, but for me, I thought it was just right, because really, when you take up your kind of goal is to kind of say, you know what, maybe I don't have to kill a ghost, maybe I can save their soul, let them pass on. And you have someone who is just so overboard that you literally have to smack sense into them left and right, which I thought was great to see Ko have to do something that honestly kind of feels like Hanako is the one who has to get smacked by Yashiro so much for just being too overboard. It was nice to see Ko actually be able to smack a ghost around and not get basically his face planted into the ground, because every time he tried to do that towards Hanako, it never really went out according to plan. So it's nice to see, honestly, him take the reins, really be the main character of this episode, because he is one of the main characters. But you definitely can say, in comparison to, say, Hanako and Yashiro, he's felt more like a supporting addition than a full-on main character until today. And this was a great way to really give him some emotional depth, some emotional maturity, see how he's growing and seeing how he's becoming his own man, and the fact that he became this ghost friend just because simply the idea of one Hanako wanting to basically help the living with wishes, and then his brother gives wishes to the dead, but you can definitely tell there's a complete opposite mindset in terms of actually wanting to help and maybe be a bit of a troll and someone who wants to watch people suffer. And to see how he was linked up to his brother, and because he ended up having a friend and was not playing by his rules, to see the monstrosity that he created, it was heartbreaking. And even to that point, I thought things were going to be fine. Like, Hanako would come in as he always does, slashes it, breaks the curse, and all would be well. We'd have bunny rabbits, we'd have, you know, the horrible girl turn into a cute little fox. I thought like something like that would happen, and then you just see him cry, you see him scared, and just, that's something you didn't expect. And the fact that 8 weeks in, we're still finding new ways to just shock the viewer to say, wow, I mean, usually at this point in time in a story like this, you know the formula, you know the predictable outcomes, but it honestly didn't feel predictable in the slightest. The only thing that might have been a little predictable was that Ko as well as Mitsuba were going to become friends. I mean, that I think most people can see coming a mile away, but the way they handled the execution with the whole, he snapped a picture of him and Ko didn't know until the end of the episode when he developed the pictures of what the thing that was important to him truly was. He probably assumed it was a building, a bird, something like that, but the fact that even if that had to be his end, the fact that he actually was able to be his friend in the end, I think does go a long way. And the way they use tears in this episode, you gotta give credit to that. Not only did we see Hanako cry and actually feel like a pathetic loser, and I'm not saying that to insult Hanako, but that's the direction they were going, to make him feel like the Hanako we see, that's not here. He's gone. This is someone who's actually trembling in fear and sorrow. and they went with such a visceral and real reaction that just was like, holy shit, that's amazing, and that's the highest compliment I can give to how they handled that portrayal in such a simple shot. And then to see the monstrosity that we were looking at and how there's always tears in his eyes and and just, it felt heartbreaking. A character who starts off that I assume, I can probably speak for many anime originals, thought it was more of a gimmicky persona. The pervertedness, saying, oh, you just want this to be like porn, the over hyperactive persona, and just all the little gimmicks that he had going for him, it kind of felt like it was a gimmick character. But obviously, even if it was a gimmicky persona, it would be an entertaining addition, because Hanako has proven no matter what character it is, whether it's really well developed or just someone to be in the sidelines, they're entertaining and feel justified in being in the show. But then you just get this dump truck just hitting you, laying down all this dirt on top of you, can't breathe, and you're like, that's how I want it. I want it to feel like there's so much depth that we're not going to see at a surface level. The surface level, you're either going to love it or hate it. I was kind of in the middle ground. I found him entertaining, but it wasn't like I was like, oh, this is the best character of the anime. And then we got that emotional depth. I'm like, okay, this definitely was one of the most memorable characters of the anime. And I'm really going to be interested to see where Ko will go after this and just how he'll be able to cope with a loss and what seems to be a failure to him, and just the fact that they blended such lightheartedness with such a dramatic flair, I think was actually one of the strongest balance we've seen. All along, Hanako has been a balance of slice of life goofy and really dramatic backstory, and they've kind of walked a thin line of balancing the two within seconds of each other constantly. How many times have we seen a dramatic face of Hanako to then a goofy face 2 seconds later? They know how to balance the two, but the idea of a character who is as overboard as we've seen to date, then to see such a real and raw reaction in how basically in his life he just really wanted to have friends. He played the part in his new school, and though he wasn't bullied, he had no friends, and even Ko himself didn't recognize him because of the fake persona he put on, and even in death, like, it still felt like he wasn't being accepted and just wanted that friend. And the fact that Ko was willing to say, like, you don't have to be alive for us to be friends. We can still be friends, I thought was such a beautiful line, and I think, you know, really goes to even put more of an emphasis on that picture. And the fact that there's two very different thought processes of either you don't help the dead because the dead have no future, or you do try to help them and show them that there is a brighter tomorrow. And you don't totally know which one of those is true. If Hanako is just trapped in the past because he believes he doesn't deserve a future because of what he's done, or maybe characters like Ko and Yashiro and others can maybe show him that the dead do deserve a future, and maybe that isn't all that there is. Because, I mean, clearly in this world, spirits kind of feel like they get a second chance, and it's interesting how they either get manipulated or just trapped in, like, self-isolation, and, like, that's amazing. One of the biggest things that I've constantly basically complimented since, I think, honestly, since, like, the second or third episode, is how there is a lot of characters in this show, and yeah, some of the characters, whether it's just random friends of Yashiro and things like that, they aren't as developed as Hanako or Ko or even Mitsuba in this episode, but it does feel like this is such a living and breathing environment. Honestly, always used to having, even if it's not like a yokai series, but just a school series, 5 to 8 characters you'll maybe focus in on, and maybe 40 to 50% of those characters, they have emotional depth. But the fact that a show that's only 8 episodes in have showed us so many different perspectives, and it doesn't matter if it's a school wonder or if it's just a random ghost or a random character, I honestly do feel like there's emotional depth to everyone. Obviously, the longer you watch, the longer you read, the more you'll see into a character's psyche and understand what they truly represent, and they're not just this one-note perverted ghost or this one-note big bad brother, or there's everything about these characters. They have a reason for thinking and feeling the way they do, and whether we agree with their mindsets or completely oppose their mindsets, I definitely feel like you understand where everyone's coming from, and those we don't as of yet, we obviously will in the future, whether in this season or the next season, or we read the manga, whatever it is, and that really goes to show how good of a story this is. I honestly think Hanako could have just been this very generic, like, they have an episodic feel of new ghosts of the season, they have this will they, won't they between Yashiro and Hanako, and they probably could have had a fan base with that alone. But the fact that the author went the route of actually giving this emotional depth and high points where it doesn't even feel like a yokai series. It doesn't just feel like a potential romantic subplot. It doesn't feel like one specific thing, but just a very complex school with a lot of dark history and funny moments, but it's this weird mix and match that you honestly feel like if you really could interact with ghosts, if ghosts were real and we could interact with them into this level, you would think that there would be emotional high points both on the comedy side but also on the dramatic, because not everyone's going to be okay being a ghost, and some who may appear to be fine with their outcome may also be hiding a lot of more darker undertones. This show, it just continues to blow me away. I don't know how it finds new ways to continue to freshen up the formula. Even after 8 weeks, it may seem like we're still early into the story, but 8 weeks by anime standards is where a lot of shows lose their momentum, and they fall victim to doing the same thing time and time again, but not Hanako-kun. It honestly continues to feel fresh and exciting, and I feel like I'm just as enthusiastic as I was walking into the first 2 episodes, which honestly, this level of excitement and entertainment doesn't happen too often. There's usually a couple of bumps at the very least, but for someone who's never read the manga, is just completely new to this series, I'm absolutely loving my time with it, and my excitement only grows, honestly. This episode really brought its A-game in terms of emotional high points, and while it did get a lot of chuckles out of me in the first little bit, it quickly threw that away for more of a sweet and dramatic pull, and it will be interesting to see where it's going to go from here, because this was definitely one of the stronger episodes for me for sure. A character who I thought was going to be a fun addition ended up being an emotional high point of the season, and that's how you know this show is continuing to just blow all of our expectations away. But I'll be interested as always, what did everyone feel? For manga readers, anime originals, what do you think of episode 8 of Hanako-kun, and where do you think it's going to go next week? Please no spoilers. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to drop a like, and remember to hit that subscribe button if you happen to be new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.